The old clock on my wall ticked so loudly that night, it felt like it was beating against my chest. Tick, 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 each second sounded heavier than the last. Outside, the rain tapped on the tin roof of my little wooden house, and the wind rattled against the shutters as if trying to break inside. I sat in my old rocking chair, staring into the dim glow of the fire, when Lily, my sweet granddaughter, asked me in her soft little voice, "Grandma, why do you always look so sad when people talk about family?" Her words struck deeper than she realized. I wanted to smile, to tell her that everything was fine, that her grandmother was simply tired. But the truth was heavier than my bones. And sometimes, when a child asks, it is because God Himself wants the truth to finally be spoken. Therefore, I looked at her, her small face lit by the flames, her eyes curious but gentle, and I whispered, "Lily, tonight I will tell you a story. My story. But you must promise me to listen carefully, because the lessons inside it are heavier than gold." She nodded eagerly, scooting closer on the worn rug, hugging her little niece. I sighed deeply. It all began on the day of your mother's wedding. A day that was supposed to be filled with joy, but instead became the start of my silence. I paused, and the suspense stretched in the air. My voice trembled as I continued. Your mother stood there in her white gown, beautiful and glowing, holding flowers in her hands. But in that same church, surrounded by laughter and music, I heard words that cut me like a knife. Someone whispered, "She is only here for the picture, nothing more. The poor old woman is nothing but a shadow now." Lily's eyes widened. "They said that about you?" "Yes," I whispered. "And the worst part was that it came from your mother's own lips, though she did not know I was close enough to hear." She laughed with her new husband, saying she didn't need me anymore, that from now on, life would be perfect without the weight of an old mother holding her down. And those words burned inside me, because I had given everything for her. The room fell silent except for the wind outside. My hands trembled as I held them close to the fire. Therefore, I stood there, smiling in the pictures, clapping when they kissed, hugging guests as though my heart was not bleeding. But inside, I was dying. Because, Lily, love can break you when it comes from your own child, and then is thrown away like a useless rag. Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "Grandma, that's so mean. You didn't deserve that." I gave a sad smile. "Child, life is not always fair. But that day, I made a choice. I chose silence. Because sometimes silence is the only weapon we have until the right time comes." Therefore, while they laughed and danced, I walked home slowly, each step heavier than the last, and I sat right in this very chair, staring at the fire, asking God why He gave me a heart that felt so much pain. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them again, my voice stronger. "But Lily, what your mother never knew, what no one in that church knew, was that your grandfather had left me something before he passed away. He left me an inheritance. A fortune, in fact, $6 million hidden in accounts, entrusted to me. He made me promise never to tell anyone until I knew the truth about their hearts. And oh, Lily, that promise saved me." Her mouth opened wide. $6 million. "Grandma, that's so much money." "Yes," I nodded slowly. "But remember this, child, money itself is not a blessing. It is a test." And when I stood there on that wedding day, hearing my daughter laugh at me, I knew God was showing me who deserved to know, and who did not. Therefore, I kept silent. I lived like a poor woman. I wore the same old dress, carried the same torn handbag, and ate simple bread while they spent thousands on parties. And every time they mocked me, I whispered to myself, "Thank God she does not know." Lily leaned forward, her little hands gripping mine. "But Grandma, didn't it hurt, keeping such a big secret?" "Oh yes, Lily. It burned inside me every day. But sometimes, the only way to see people's true hearts is to let them believe you have nothing. Because if they love you when you are poor, then their love is real. But if they hate you when they think you are useless, then their love was never there at all. The fire crackled, and shadows danced on the old walls. I could see her thinking deeply, her young mind trying to understand the weight of those words. I kissed her forehead gently and whispered, "That was the beginning of my silence, child." But it was not the end. Because life tested me again and again, and every test revealed another truth. Her eyes glistened as she whispered back, "Grandma, please, tell me everything. I want to know." And so, with the storm raging outside and the night holding its breath, I began to open the doors of my memory, doors that had been locked for years, doors that carried the weight of betrayal, sacrifice, and survival. Therefore, I whispered, "Tonight you will hear the rest. And when you do, you will understand why silence can be stronger than shouting, and why secrets can sometimes protect more than they destroy." I held her hand tighter, knowing that the hardest part of the story was still to come. The storm outside pressed harder against the windows, but inside the little house, it was quiet except for the sound of Lily's breathing. She looked at me with those innocent eyes, and I knew I could not stop now. My story had waited too long. "Lily," I began softly, "after your mother's wedding, I thought perhaps time would soften her heart. I thought maybe she would realize that I was still her mother, the woman who carried her in my arms when she was sick, the one who scrubbed floors and went hungry so she could eat." But months turned into years, and each time she called, it was never to ask if I was well. It was only to ask for something. Lily tilted her head. "Like what, Grandma?" I sighed, remembering the sting of those phone calls. She wanted money, though she believed I had none. She wanted me to sell this little house. She wanted me to take loans in my name, to help her husband with his big plans. And when I said I had nothing to give, she laughed and told her friends I was a burden. But what she did not know, what no one knew, was that I had $6 million in my name, sitting quietly, waiting like a hidden fire. The fire in the stove popped, sparks dancing up like tiny ghosts. Therefore, I continued, I played the role they gave me. I was the poor old woman. I wore second-hand coats. I mended the same shoes until they could no longer hold together. I lived on oatmeal and tea, while they spent $500,000 on vacations. And every time they passed me by, pretending I was invisible, I whispered to myself, "Thank God they do not know." Because their greed would have destroyed them faster than any storm. Lily frowned. "But Grandma, didn't you ever want to tell them? To show them what you had?" A bitter smile tugged at my lips. "Oh, child, I wanted to so many times. I wanted to scream at Christmas dinners, when they told me to sit at the corner of the table. I wanted to throw the bank papers in their faces when they told me I was useless. But I remembered your grandfather's words before he died, 'Patience, Margaret. Let them reveal their hearts before you reveal your hand.' And so, I kept my silence. Silence became my shield, my armor. The old floorboards creaked as I leaned closer to Lily. But silence is heavy, my dear. It can crush you if you are not careful. There were nights I cried so hard into my pillow that I thought my chest would split. There were days I walked past families in the park, laughing and holding hands, and I felt like a ghost. And every time I saw your mother's face on the holiday cards she sent, smiling with her husband, standing in front of their mansion, I felt both pride and sorrow. Pride, because I had raised a strong daughter. Sorrow, because she believed I was worth nothing. Lily's lips trembled. "Grandma, that makes me so sad." I squeezed her hand gently. "Do not cry, child. Because sadness, too, has a purpose. It teaches us what matters most. And while your mother and her husband chased luxury, I learned the power of small things. The taste of warm bread. The comfort of a neighbor's hello. The peace of sitting by this fire. And slowly, I realized, wealth is not measured by what you spend, but by what you endure and what you give. The flames flickered across the walls, and my shadow looked larger, older, almost like a figure carved in stone. Therefore, I said firmly, I waited. For years, I waited. I watched as their marriage grew colder, as deaths began to pile around them like fallen leaves. And all the while, they still looked at me as though I were nothing but an old woman with nothing to offer. They never once asked about my heart. They never once said thank you for the years I carried them. They believed the lie of their own eyes, that because I lived humbly, I had no worth. And so, I let them believe it. Lily leaned forward, whispering, "But Grandma, weren't you afraid?" Afraid they'd never change. I looked into her eyes, my voice low but steady. "Yes, Lily. I was afraid. But sometimes, fear is the very thing that shapes courage. I feared they would never see the truth, but I trusted that one day, the truth would see them. And when that day came, I promised myself, I would be ready." The storm outside began to soften, the rain turning to a gentle patter, as though even the night was listening. I brushed Lily's hair back from her forehead and said, "Child, you must understand something. Love is the greatest gift, but it is also the most fragile. When it is broken, it leaves scars deeper than any knife. And yet, those scars can either destroy you, or make you stronger. Therefore, I chose to become stronger. I chose to let silence teach me, while I waited for God's timing. I looked into the fire, seeing not flames but years of sacrifice, loneliness, and patience. Your mother thought she had won. She thought I was powerless. But what she never knew was that every cruel word, every act of selfishness, every laugh at my expense, was building her own downfall. Because the truth cannot stay hidden forever. And when it rises like the sun, burning, undeniable, and merciless. I turned back to Lily, my eyes glistening with both pain and power. That, my dear, is where the story begins to change. And the day of reckoning came sooner than anyone expected. Her little body tensed, her eyes wide with anticipation. "What happened, Grandma?" I took a deep breath, the firelight painting my face with shadows. "That, child," I said slowly, "is the part of the story I will tell you next. And when you hear it, you will understand why silence was never weakness, but the beginning of justice." The storm outside had passed, leaving the air damp and heavy, like the earth itself was holding its breath. Lily was curled against my arm, her small hand clutching mine as if she feared I would vanish if she let go. I could feel the weight of her anticipation pressing against my chest. "Grandma," she whispered, "what happened next?" I closed my eyes for a moment. The memories came rushing back like waves, sharp, relentless, unstoppable. And then, I began. Underscore 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 underscore. For 9 years, I lived quietly, as though I were nothing but a shadow. I walked the streets with my head bowed, I wore clothes patched more times than I could count, and I let them believe the story they had written about me, that I was poor, old, and useless. But inside me, fire lived. Inside me, I carried your grandfather's words, his inheritance, his strength. And I knew, one day, silence would no longer be my shield, but my weapon. That day came on Christmas morning. Underscore 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 underscore. They had invited me out of duty, not love. My daughter's home was grand, a mansion that echoed with chandeliers and marble floors. I still remember stepping across that threshold, holding my small gift in my wrinkled hands, a knitted scarf for my grandson, though I doubted he would ever wear it. Their laughter filled the room, not with joy but with arrogance. Glasses clinked, expensive wine flowed, and I stood by the doorway like a stranger. Then it happened. Your mother's husband, his voice drunk with pride, leaned back in his chair and said loudly to the whole room, "She's too stupid to realize what's really going on. Margaret doesn't have 2 dimes to rub together, but still shows up every year, like some old ghost." The table erupted in laughter. My daughter laughed too, her eyes shining with cruel amusement. And then, my own son, the boy I had carried inside me for 9 long months, looked right at me and said, "You're the most useless woman ever. Why are you even still alive?" The words cut deeper than any blade. And though my heart trembled, I did not cry. No, Lily. I did not give them my tears. Instead, I looked at each of them in silence, and for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. It was time. Underscore 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 underscore. Therefore, I said aloud that night, my voice steady as stone, "You shall see the truth." I reached into my worn purse and pulled out a single envelope. It was yellowed with age, but the weight inside it was heavy, heavier than gold. I placed it on the table. "This," I said, "is the deed to the company your father left me. The company I sold for $6 million. The room froze. Glasses stopped me there. Smiles dropped like masks from their faces. "Yes," I continued, my voice calm but sharp, "while you called me poor, I built a fortune. While you mocked me, I lived simply, because I wanted to see who you truly were when you believed I had nothing. And now, I know." Their eyes grew wide with greed. My daughter's husband reached for the envelope, his hands trembling, but I snatched it back. "No," I said, my voice like thunder in that glittering hall. "This money is not for you. It will never be for you. You have shown me who you are, selfish, cruel, blind to love. You abandoned me when I needed you most, and yet you laughed in my face. But this money, this legacy, it will not feed your greed. It will build something greater." My daughter's face turned pale. "Mother, you can't do this." But I looked her in the eye. "I can. And I already have." Underscore 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 underscore. You see, Lily, I had been preparing for this moment for years. I had already placed the money in trust. Not for them. Not for their mansions or their debts. No, it was for children without homes. For widows who, like me, had been left behind. For hospitals where the sick lay forgotten. And yes, for you, my sweet Lily, the only one who ever sat beside me, who ever asked to hear my story, who ever held my hand not out of duty, but out of love. Their voices rose in anger, shouting, begging, cursing me. But I stood taller than I had in years, my back straight, my eyes unflinching. Therefore, I told them, "This is your inheritance, the memory of your cruelty. And the lesson that love is worth more than any dollar. You thought me weak, but it is you who are poor, poor in heart, poor in soul, poor in what truly matters." I turned my back to them then, for the first and final time. Their voices followed me out into the cold night, but I did not waver. The snow fell around me, soft and silent, and I felt free. Underscore 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 underscore. I looked down at Lily, who was now crying quietly, her small face pressed against my arm. Grandma, that must have been so hard. I stroked her hair gently. Yes, child. It was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the most necessary. Because sometimes love must be tough. Sometimes the only way to teach is through loss. And they had to lose me, not my life, but my presence, my forgiveness, my blessing. Only then could they see the truth of who they had become. The fire crackled, filling the silence that followed. Therefore, I whispered, I chose revenge, but not the kind that destroys. My revenge was moral. I did not curse them with poverty, they had already cursed themselves. I gave them the gift of truth, and I took away the power they thought they held over me. And that, child, is the sharpest blade of all. Underscore 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 underscore. Lily raised her tear-filled eyes. But Grandma, do you regret it? I thought for a moment, staring into the fire. Regret? No. Because to regret would mean to undo what was necessary. I regret only that love was not enough for them. But for you, Lily, for you, I will always give love. And I tell you this story so you may never forget, never measure a person by what they seem to have. Look at their heart, their sacrifices, their silence. Because sometimes, the strongest warriors are the quietest ones. She threw her arms around me then, hugging me tight. And in that embrace, I felt something I had not felt in years, not revenge, not sorrow, but peace. Underscore 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 underscore. The night deepened. The storm had long passed, and the world outside lay still, blanketed in snow. I held my granddaughter close, my voice low and final. So remember this, Lily. The greatest treasure is not money. It is love, patience, and truth. But if ever someone dares to strip you of your worth, do not fear. Because silence, when carried long enough, becomes thunder. And thunder always demands to be heard. Her little voice trembled. I remember, Grandma. And I knew she would. Underscore 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 underscore. That night, as the fire burned low and Lily drifted to sleep in my lap, I closed my eyes. I had carried my story for decades, its weight pressing against my heart. But now, with each word spoken, the burden lifted. They may have thought me useless. They may have mocked me, betrayed me, laughed at me. But in the end, I had the last word. Not through cruelty. Not through destruction. But through justice that cut sharper than any knife, because it was both moral and true. And that, Lily, is why I'm still alive.